This whole envious thing, whether it's magician, photographer, musician, whatever it might be, a lot of people don't understand that there's more than enough room for everyone to shine. Obviously, that's the best part about magic. The more unassuming you are, the bigger impact your magic has.
There's something about magic that just releases that inner child.
It does, and people, they become curious when they hear the word magic. That's what I've found, and one question I get asked a lot recently is, what kind of magic? And I'm like, well, what kind do you want it to be? This is going to end up offending a few magicians that are watching this, but...
Welcome back to the Mindful Creator Podcast, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you're loving the episodes and if you're loving the guests, then please make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Also, make sure you comment below with your favorite part of the episode or the part that impacted you the most from the conversation, because I absolutely love hearing how the conversations are making a difference for you. Your interaction and engagement is what helps me make this podcast that much bigger and better, with even more amazing guests and even more powerful conversations. None of this would be possible without you. So again, I'm hugely grateful. Thank you so much. And let's get into the show. My guest today is Saavan Thethy. Saavan is a magician who has actually religiously been doing magic as a career and chosen to make his passion his full-time vocation over all other traditional career paths, and that's something I really admire. On top of that, he's a resident magician at a couple of prestigious places in London, and beyond there, you can see him at a lot of celebrations, birthdays, weddings as a provider of entertainment. Saavan, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Mate, I'm really looking forward to getting into this, and what I want to start off with is, how did magic become something that sparked a passion in you that made you decide to make it a career? Like, take us back to before Saavan the magician as we know him today. What was that like growing up and finding that passion in magic for you?
So it's a really weird one. My background was actually in art. So before magic, I actually wanted to be an artist or a teacher of some kind. So that's how I always envisioned myself.
Really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I always thought I'm either going to be an art teacher or a science teacher. And I wasn't like, I was the kid who would want to stay in classrooms in primary school and I'd be doing drawings. So that was my thing. Like, I used to basically just go throughout my days like drawing things. It was mainly like Transformers and Beyblades and stuff to do with Doctor Who and sci-fi stuff. Like that was I was a little geek basically.
So,
No, it's true.
That's amazing. So you're like art, but for the sci-fi programs and like,
yeah,
Transformers makes sense.
cartoons,
Anyway.
you name it. And then when I was doing magic, obviously this is a few years down the line, it was when I was doing my GCSEs, and like all the teachers always say, they're like, okay, so what course are you thinking about doing for university? And then they help you decide what A levels you're doing and all that stuff. And at that point, I had been like, I don't know what I want to do, because I was still in like a flux. And then because I was doing magic for a few years at that point, so I'm like 16 by then, it just became a thing where I was like, okay, I'm going to do this after university. So I told my mum and dad, and they were like, go to uni first, and then, maybe you can think about doing magic after. So that was kind of like the beginnings of it.
So that's an interesting thing which I think a lot of people go through. Like, you're Punjabi, right? I'm Hindu. We're basically both brown kids. We're Indian. And there's a traditional career path that's kind of outlined.
Yeah, doctor, dentist, lawyer, and all that jazz.
Doctor, dentist, lawyer, accountant, engineer. That's like the I was going to say a trifecta, but it's 5. So whatever that is.
I think there's probably more as well.
Yeah, it's probably more, but that's like the prestigious thing to do, which then family and friends can then go and boast about that their son or their daughter is X, Y, and Z as a profession. What did you choose as a degree, and how did you even navigate the conversation? Because I'm assuming there was a point where you were like, well, I don't want to go and do a degree if I want to follow through as a magician.
So I had a really weird year after. So, most people do their A levels, so it's 2 years or 3 years, like depending on if they do retakes or not. They do that and then they go straight into their uni course. On my A levels, I actually done graphic design as a degree.
Okay.
But I was stuck between graphic design and sociology and criminology, because my predicted grades for graphic design or product design at the time, that was predicted as an A, and sociology they had predicted as a B. But those grades were switched around when I got the exam results back. So I got an A in sociology and I got a B in product and graphic design. So for me, I was just like, oh, I don't know what to do now. And like I had my graphic teacher saying, look, you're going to be the only person in this whole year group that's going on to do something design wise. So do it. And then like obviously there were a lot of sociology students doing their thing. So I done an art and design foundation year.
Hmm.
And it's basically when, if you don't know what, like you get different ones like architecture, photography,
Yeah.
film works. They make you do all of that in the space of a year, so you can feel which one you actually like. And it was a weird one because there's so many with graphics. I've always liked drawing, so that was the one
Hmm.
I kind of leant towards. And then I was going to do architecture, so I was just like, I can either do 3 years in this or architecture, which is 7 years.
Yeah.
And I was just like, the thought of leaving uni when I'm, what, 25, it would have been. I was like, there's no way I can do that. My little cousin's doing architecture now.
Yeah.
But at the time, they said, okay, whatever you want to go into, at the end of the year, you're going to do your personal statements. I wrote out two. So I done a personal statement for graphic design and I done one for sociology. And I was just like, I don't know whether to apply to Brunel or to apply to Ravensbourne and like some of the art
Yeah.
unis. Eventually, I just lent with art because I couldn't deal with doing essays for 4 years. It's just,
Oh,
I'm a creative.
I can relate to that so bad. Yeah.
It's if it's writing on stuff you like, it's cool. But when you're just sitting there with loads of textbooks
Yeah.
next to you and stuff, like I done geography, I done maths at A level as well, and like the workload for that, it just wasn't. It wasn't exactly the nicest thing.
Hmm.
But with graphics, with any kind of art form, obviously it's a lot, but you kind of work at your own pace because your ideas come, depending on you. So that's what kind of I was just like, it's got to be graphic design, and then done that. Next thing you know, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do magic now. So
So okay, let's talk about that because obviously that's very different to graphic design, right?
yeah,
So in the lead up to you going ahead and getting a degree and your parents saying no, go to uni first. First of all, what was that conversation like? Like, was that just a simple yes, I'm going to go and do what mum and dad say, or was there something else
it
happening?
was a split decision. So my dad actually works in the events industry,
Okay.
and funnily enough, when I just got into magic, he got hired to light up, put some lighting at the magic circle, and I got to go with him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is some insane synchronicity.
There's if I had told you certain things and what happened throughout the years in my magic career, you would believe that someone set me up to only do magic
Do you mind sharing that actually?
from the start.
From the start. Let's see, like, because what I want to know is how did this path of magic as a career map out for you? Because my belief is that the universe is always working for us in some way or form, especially when there's something that we are aware that we are passionate about.
Absolutely, and I think they always say, you always attract what's supposed to be, like whatever's meant for you, it will find you.
Correct. So let's go from the start. Let's talk about those synchronicities. What actually happened?
Do you know the magician Dynamo,
Yes.
or Stephen Frayne as he likes to go by now? But I
I did not know that was his name.
yeah. So it's he done a rebrand recently, but I had seen him on a show called A State of Mind.
Hmm.
So this was, I think it was his first ever show on Channel 4 when he was 21, 22 probably.
Okay.
And he made a card vanish. And I can't remember what rapper it was in front of. You can see it on YouTube. The clips are still up there.
Mhm.
But he made a card vanish, and this guy's like, blood. What, like one of those proper TV reactions. I was like, oh my gosh, that's insane. So my brother had shown me that. He was like, bruv, that's so mad. Just by chance, 2 weeks later, my mum, who at the time had worked with a company that worked with bringing Bollywood actors to the UK,
Mhm.
so there was an exhibition going on in Canary Wharf, and me and my dad went. Obviously, we had tickets to it. Dynamo's there. He was like, what are the
No
odds of
way.
that? This is 2 weeks later, and he was. There's a photo on my Instagram. I'll send it to you. You can probably
Yeah.
put it on screen. But he was working with one of the exhibitors there, and I was like, Dad, that's Dynamo. And he was like, that can't be him. And then we went over, and he was like, yeah, I'm Dynamo. And I was like, can you do that card thing you done on TV? Like, you were holding it in your hand, and it just went poof. And he'd done it, and I was like, how's he doing it? And then I've actually got his first ever business card. So he would just write down his email and his manager's number at the time on a card, and he was like, I'm working on some really big stuff at the moment. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. But yeah, that was the first exposure I ever had to it.
Mhm.
Then, so throughout the years, you get given magic sets and stuff as a kid.
Marvin's magic sets.
I know Marvin personally.
No ways.
He's a friend of mine, yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, my uncle used to work for Marvin's, and I think
What's his name? Rakesh, by any chance?
Yes.
I know him.
Jesus Christ.
Not
serious?
personally. We've only spoken online, but I know exactly who he is.
Oh my God, dude,
Yeah.
that's wow. Okay, that's crazy synchronicity in itself.
There you go.
So that's where I used to get my magic sets from, because he used to, like, when he started years and years ago.
Yeah, I think he
it
even
was
had
in
a
Hamleys
photo.
in
Yeah,
London,
in the back,
in
back
the
of it, and
Marvin
they
section.
demonstrate it.
Yeah,
for you.
yeah.
So I got a few of my cousins and my brother, and like we all got given magic sets when we were younger, and we used to compete who had the best ones. They're always Marvin's magic kits,
Yep.
and obviously no one ever does it as a thing. Like for most young boys, it's just a gift you get given at Christmas. And then I had a couple of smaller ones, and then 2 years after that meeting with Dynamo, so I was watching his videos on YouTube. I think he was with Adidas at the time doing magic for them. I got given a magic set by my mum and dad for Christmas. It was a Marvin's Magic card. I've still got it,
Okay.
and it's in very good condition. So, God knows if it's a collector's item or
Mint
not.
condition.
Maybe, man. And I just started practicing with those, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." So, family events started coming around. I would basically have like the trick deck of cards,
Yep.
and like the real deck of cards, and then I was like sticking cards like in different parts of the room, and I was basically doing all that. And it was at first like people didn't really like, the youngsters like it, but the auntie and all that kind of, how it is, they get a bit weird. They were like, what's this and stuff. And at one point one of my mum's relatives said to her, your son's going to get into gambling and stuff when he's older. And like she was going around saying, don't watch his magic and stuff. And
Really?
yeah, it was a thing. And obviously I was oblivious to all of it.
Yeah,
As a
yeah.
12-year-old, you don't know what's going on. You just carry on with your life. But she was like, he's doing card tricks, like, take a chill pill, if anything. And that was it. I literally just started doing card tricks at functions. Anytime I was with all my cousins, they were like, oh, what's the latest trick you've learned? And I think I was like 14. Some auntie at a wedding I think it was in Leeds. There was a family wedding in Leeds, and they said, "Oh, do you do this at like for a living?" And I was just like, "Yeah." Obviously, I had no idea what I was saying. And she was like, "Oh, can I book you for one of our family events?" And that was like my first ever booking, basically.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like, I can't believe I said yes to that. But
What, in that moment, what made you say yes?
I don't know. It's one of those things. When you do magic, yeah, it's like any entertainer. You're kind of buzzing off a crowd, and obviously, all my cousins who are all my age, because they really liked it, and like obviously, there's auntie and uncles looking at the back, saying, "Oh my gosh, what's going on here?" I don't know. I think it was just a thing. I was just like, you're just happy and you just say yes to anything. I think it was just one of those things, and then next thing you know, it's like snowballed into something ridiculously big now. So yeah.
That is amazing. Okay, wow. So, was there anything else that happened synchronistically between there and today?
There was. So obviously, I've seen Dynamo, then I've met him, then I've got given a magic set, and then I think the year after that, no, sorry, the same year there was a guy on TV called the Masked Magician. You probably know who
I
he
remember
is.
the Masked Magician. Yeah.
Yeah, the Magic Circle weren't exactly fond of his
The one that kept
behavior.
revealing all
Yeah,
the secrets.
the one with all the
yeah.
flip birds with him. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that came on TV. So my dad used to be watching that. He's like, "Oh, check this out! He's revealing all the tricks." So me and him used to watch that, and most of the time we were just like, "Oh my gosh, how's he like?" You wonder how the next trick's going to be done, even though they explain it. You just think, okay, now you can kind of see it from behind. And most of the time, because he was revealing stage illusions, it was, the girls played a big part of it because
Yeah.
everyone's looking at them, and
Yeah.
he's doing something that the audience doesn't care about. So like it's like almost like a lesson on misdirection. So watched that, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Then my dad gets a call for a conference at the Magic Circle a year after that. So I think I was year 8, and so he does lighting, LED lighting. So like up lighting, this kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
but for big halls. He got invited to the circle, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, I've been invited to the Magic Circle of all places." I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing!" And I was like, "Can I come?" So he called him up and said, "Hi, I'm sorting out some lights for the venue. Can my son come?" And they said, "How old is he?" And he was like 13. And they said, "Look, we're really sorry, it's an over 18s kind of thing."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, it's fine, it will happen eventually." Then he gets a call back an hour later saying, actually, bring him. Like, it'd be great to, maybe.
Wow.
Bro, that for me, and I was like the youngest person in there. I was thinking, damn, I've got a photo somewhere on my computer, like all flat hair, and like I didn't look like this. If anything, the smile might be similar. But I went, and on the night it was great because you get to meet the way these events are at the Magic Circle, because you can go and visit, you guys together as well. You basically go, you can buy drinks and stuff, and they have like 3 or 4 magicians in the main club room. So they approach you, and they'll go group to group, and he done one on me, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So it was like a card, and it appeared folded inside a little purse that he had, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And then I was like, I do magic, and obviously these guys are expert level
Yep.
magicians, yeah. And I was just like, I wonder what they're gonna say. And he was like, oh my gosh, what do you know? I was like, and that trick where you make the card just vanish in your hand, I was like, I can try this, because I wasn't like,
Yeah.
I didn't have routines like how you've seen on Instagram.
Yeah.
It was very different back then. It was kind of like cool moments, like check this out, check this card, and this form has changed. But I'd done that, and he was like, that's really good. And then he taught me how to make multiple appear out of the air, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's really cool. And he goes, what cards do you use? And I was like, just any that I can get my hands on. And then he brought me 2 packs of bicycle cards, which are like,
yeah.
they're like the magician standard.
Yeah.
And he was like, give me a second. He came out with 2 decks. He was like, look, hang on to these. They're fresh decks, fully set. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is amazing. I've still got those decks as well. And I just started practicing with those. The weirdest thing after that whole event was I got sent a book called The Royal Road to Card Magic by that magician. So his name was Richard McDougall. So they said it's like, I wouldn't say it's a Bible, but it's like one of the first magic books you'll ever get. Like if you're entering the art form. They sent me that, and 2 Magic Circle decks of cards, because like you get those as well. And then it was a note saying, it'd be great when you're older, maybe you can do work experience here or something, and that could be the start of your career. And for me, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. So
That is
they
amazing.
really showed an interest, which was really nice. So
I think that's so important as well, like to have, especially when someone like is a kid, 12, 13, 14 years old, where we're super impressionable, and like you say something when most adults might maybe acknowledge it or might just dismiss it, to have it encouraged
it's so
is
important.
like, I'm assuming that was a big
Yeah,
spark
I was
for you.
excited. I was just like, oh my gosh, I've got my own bicycle. Because as a kid, obviously you don't even realize the cost of things. I was just like, oh my gosh, these are really expensive. Obviously, they're only like 2-3 quid a pack. But like the thought of getting that, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is great. So I just took it as a good sign. So, and I used to take that book to school after I'd done my work. I used to sit there, read, try to learn the card tricks out. I still got the book, so it's a bit worn out now, but it's a foundation for where I was learning the tricks at originally.
I love that. So what would you think that everyone listening needs to know about what has helped you keep that spark alive as a professional magician today? Like, what's the thing from your background that actually keeps you engaged and passionate at the level that you are to continue doing what you're doing? The purpose of this podcast is to help you make your dreams a reality in every area of life. And that includes traveling and exploring some of the world's most beautiful destinations, like the Maldives. Myself and my wife took a trip to the Maldives last year, and with the huge number of islands to choose from and the cost differences between all of them, it all became a little bit overwhelming. That's where Simply Maldives, a dedicated travel agency for all the islands, stepped in, gave us the best advice, helped us plan our perfect trip, and got us a fantastic deal. That's why I'm proud and excited to say that I'm now partnered with Simply Maldives. Their expert knowledge can help you plan the perfect dream holiday. Whether you're traveling solo, traveling as a couple, traveling with your family and kids, or you have specific dietary requirements, they have something for you. So if you're interested in jetting off to the Maldives for your next dream holiday, then reach out to Simply Maldives through the link below, and I can guarantee you, you'll be well looked after.
It's watching other magicians. And
That's interesting.
I don't mean as in like, watching them and copying them, because I would never want to do that. It's considered a very disrespectful thing within our industry. But when there's meetups that happen, like sometimes I'd be filming out with a magic company, or sometimes, we're at the magic circle, and that's like where people try new things. And it's stuff that they probably aren't really confident with, but they'll just do it because it's their group of friends. They don't mind screwing it up. But when they do those things, they're normally like these underground, beautifully kept secrets, which are just absolutely unreal. There's a guy in the magic circle, really old. He must be 80s. His name's Tom Whitestone.
Mm-hmm.
I kid you not, this guy is like the magic circle's best kept secret. If you saw him, you'd be like, why are you not on TV? But he's such a humble old dude, and his magic is TV grade. Like
Wow.
I once showed him a trick, and he was like, "Oh, can I show you my version of that?" And he done it. I won't say what the trick was, and I was like, "How the hell have you done that?" And all the magicians around were just looking at each other like, "What the f?" Like he's watching people like him. Like,
So that's amazing, right? Because in most industries, a lot of people could look at what other people are doing and feel envious.
oh, that's a big part of magic.
Yeah.
It's probably there's a good side to it. That good side's probably 10%. The other 90% is probably the most toxic and disgusting side of any industry on the planet, in my opinion.
I'm well, thank you so much for the honesty. What I'm curious about is how do you, because that's what you said is what keeps your spark and your passion alive. So in an industry that is as toxic as you say, when it's filled with envy or jealousy or, like essentially just wanting maybe other people to not be as good as they are or yourself, how do you turn that into something that is what sparks your passion?
It's a weird one because I don't think this whole envious thing that people, whether it's magician, photographer, musician, whatever it might be, I think a lot of people don't understand that there's more than enough room for everyone to shine. It's not like we're all like pitching to do the same party or the same residency or something like that. There might be cases where there's some crossover, but I feel like with that whole thing, a lot of people don't understand that the world's such a big place that there's so many different types of magic that we could all do, and like there shouldn't really be any competition. All the guys I know, like my friends in magic, they're genuinely very nice, and they're not like we go out and we do magic with each other. We go out and we can have a few drinks. We could be normal, ask each other about our families or relationships. But it's not like a magic meetup thing. It's like I think that's one thing that definitely drives it, because then I know these guys are actually my friends as opposed to just business partners or associates, if you know what I mean.
Who's your biggest inspiration as a magician or a performer, and how do you incorporate what you gain as inspiration into your own act?
Dynamo was the inspiration. David Blaine is definitely the second part of that equation, because what Blaine done his street magic special. He was the one who modernized it, but he basically made it cool for people like me, or Magic Singh, or Jamie Nichols, and even Dynamo. All these guys, all these close up workers. He made it cool for that to be a thing, because before that, magic was a stage thing with like guys in a blazer and a dicky bow, and
It's like the Penn and Teller version of magic, right?
yeah, but I think even Penn and Teller, they're pretty modern.
Yeah.
Like they come out in really sharp suits, and they've got like a really, obviously Teller doesn't speak.
Yeah.
I've heard him speak.
Oh, no ways. Have you
In the magic circle?
Yeah.
He came down with Penn, and after his show, and they done a talk and a lecture and stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's what he sounds like. And funny enough,
What did he sound like?
he sounds like just a normal dude, and I was like, I was expecting some mystical voice or some shit like that.
It's like super underwhelmed. I was expecting some like super high pitched voice. I have no idea why.
He just sounds like you're not like, if you're on the phone to him, you would never think, yeah, that's Penn. Like, sorry, Teller. You
Yeah.
would never think that's Teller. And I'm just like, damn, like, bro, you're so unassuming. That. Obviously, that's the best part about magic. The more unassuming you are, the bigger impact your magic
Yeah.
has. Because people actually don't know what's going to come out of you. Like when you do the trick, then it's just like, oh shit, I wasn't expecting that. And I feel like obviously depending on the magician or the performer, that always has a variance, and especially on the audience as well. So that was really interesting.
I love that. What do you think of magicians like David Copperfield and like all those, the ones that were maybe a bit more
Stagefied.
yeah, stagified, and I'm gonna say old school because
They're great, and they've got some really good shows in Vegas, by the way. Like these old school guys, and Vegas is obviously like an epicenter of magic. But those guys, the thing about magic is it's evolved throughout the whole, like the last 50 years. Like you had Paul Daniels, then you had David Copperfield doing these illusions on TV, then you went to David Blaine, Chris Angel, then Dynamo, then Darren Brown. It's in magic's like this ever changing thing, and they all represent their generation extremely well.
Yep.
So, and Copperfield, I think I was reading an article on Google where he's like one of the top 5 richest magicians in the world or something like that.
I'm not surprised.
He's got his own private island.
So, probably one that he moved. So.
Made it disappear off the radar like the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, that's incredible, right? So, I mean, Darren Brown, again, is someone I've watched a lot. And
I've been to one of his live shows.
Not only did I get the privilege to go to his live show last January, but I ended up on stage for one of the acts.
No way.
And I've always been to those shows going, everyone's staged. There's no way that it's possible. Everyone's going to be in it.
Far from it.
And then the next thing I know, I'm on stage and I'm like, well, I'm not in on this. So maybe not everyone is in on this. And you go through the whole thing. I lost the ability to speak for a little while through his hypnosis and stuff.
Terrifying.
It was insane. Probably one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had, for sure.
I remember I was at one of his shows, and like when he says, like, if you fall between X and Y age, please stand up, and then he starts saying things, and I was one of the only people remaining standing towards the front. There was like 4 people in front of me, and he was going up to them. And in my head, when he came up to me, I was just like, please, God, don't put me to sleep or something next year. And I'm just like, one guy he pulled on stage, he was just like, yeah, just go to sleep. I was like, that is
I was that guy.
Bro.
So
first-hand experience.
He literally put his hand out to give me a handshake.
And it's last thing
and
you
the
remember.
next thing I know, and I'm conscious, so I wasn't like actually sleeping, but he put his palm on my forehead, and the next thing I knew was I was lying down on the floor.
That's so scary.
And
man.
I was like, I just didn't know what was happening. I couldn't move, nothing.
That's one, mentalism is incredible. He's one of the best performers of our time. Like, there's so many magicians will tell you that. But like, to put someone to sleep just by pulling them on stage, shaking their hand, that's scary, man.
Yeah. Now I'm a little bit worried about what kind of powers you possess.
Oh, no. They're, my demons are a lot less powerful than his ones. So,
So, okay, well, even for someone like that to perform on stage the way that they do, for you to perform the way that you do requires a certain level of confidence and self-belief. What have you done in your life to give you the level of confidence that you have to perform at the level that you do at any of these events that you go to, or even like doing street magic?
Street magic's probably the hardest out of all of them, because you're literally cold approaching randomers on the street, and obviously there's you get these buskers in like Covent Garden at Magic Corner and stuff. They've got a hard job because obviously they're drawing in a crowd as opposed to cold approaching people, and like to maintain that crowd is obviously a big thing. But I've always looked at it as the worst thing that someone can say to you is no, like no thank you. So like we've done it loads of times when we're filming street magic. We always say, we're just like, oh guys, we're filming for TikTok. It's not anything embarrassing. It's just, you get a free magic show for 5 minutes, and, like, we'll give you our Instagrams after. And, some people say yes, some people say no. Some people get really excited. Then you get the guys who say, oh, do we have to pay? And I'm just like, don't have to, but I won't mind. But I think that's literally it for me. It's like one of my mates, another magician, even he said, he was like, bro, the worst thing someone can tell you is no. And once they say yes, like, especially at weddings, because when I was younger, I used to have like bad approach anxiety. Because in my head, I was just like, what weirdo goes up to people and asks them if they want to see magic tricks? I didn't know it was that easy. Like, hey, do you want to see some magic? That's literally how I do it now. But I think that's the worst of it. It's just like, hey guys, how you doing? You want to see some magic? And then, like, if you can just say hello to them, I think it's kind of like approaching someone in a bar. You just get over that initial fear, and you kind of just take it as it is. So
I love that. It resonates a lot because I've got a whole background in sales, and it's the same kind of fear. Like everyone fears the no, but that is literally the worst thing that can happen. They can say no, which means you just move on to the next person.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But how do you go from someone who's got approach anxiety to someone who will go and ask random people in the street, do you want to see a magic show?
So it's just a thing that comes with time, like when I was 13, 14, and I was still getting used to like, okay, I have to go to a gig, I have to approach X amount of people in the night or whatever. It was very much just because you don't know what the people are going to be like, firstly. And, obviously as you start doing magic, you'll go to a wedding and maybe all the youngsters want to see it. The auntie will look at you and they're like, who the hell is this? We don't want to see that. And they just say no. And I'm just like, yeah, cool. Have a nice day. You kind of just have to live through it. And there's never been a situation where I've said, hey, do you want to see some magic? And it's been like a violent or like a hostile reaction back. Actually, well, I wouldn't call it hostile, but there is a funny story I'll mention in a bit.
Okay.
But I think it's just one of those things. You kind of just it's just like saying hello to someone, except after you've said hello, you're going to be like, do you want to see some magic? And I think everyone is kind of just open to it, especially if it's a party. I think in that kind of environment,
Makes it easier.
yeah, and they're almost like people are expecting it, if you know what I mean. And especially if it's an Indian wedding, or if it's one of these nice, residencies and clubs, because you get some strange characters there, but you often find that the guys that even have that tough exterior where they pretend they don't like it, and at the end they love it. They're like, oh, bro, can you just please hang out here and do a couple more? And I'm like, yeah, of course, bro. That's what I'm here for. So
There's something about magic that just releases that inner child.
it does, and people, they become curious when they hear the word magic. That's what I've found. And one question I get asked a lot recently is, what kind of magic? And I'm like, well, what kind do you want it to be? Because I've done this thing in the last 2 years where I don't do what I like doing anymore. I kind of look at people and I'm like, I think they're gonna like this, and then if it doesn't go that way, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try this instead. So I kind of like just improvise a lot of my routines on the spot now, as opposed to having a set. These are my 3 favorite tricks, if you know what I mean.
So that skill that you have now to move away from what you think you should do and going more on what you might observe is going to be a hit with the person or the audience that you're speaking to in that moment. How did you train that skill?
It's a weird one. Thing is, you get 2 types of magicians. So you get scripted magicians, and then you get the kind that are just, their magic's secondary to them. I don't know if that makes sense. So I've been in situations where it's like been a few of us on a gig, and a scripted magician is someone who can't break outside their script. Otherwise, they start to panic. Like it's
Yeah.
genuinely like, because a lot of us magicians, we come from like a socially awkward background, and obviously the magic is our way of expressing ourselves. But a lot of magicians don't actually learn the social aspect of it. They just focus so much on the trick that the human aspect kind of gets lost. And I remember one time I was at a booking with a few magicians. I won't mention their name. They're nice guys. And he was doing this trick with like a sponge, sponge ball. And this girl he was doing it on, like just mid trick, said, "How long have you been doing this?" The guy, you could tell he was like, it was like the panic in his eyes. He just went dead silent for a good 4 or 5 seconds, which when you're performing, that's a lot of dead time. And he just looked around, and then he just point blank ignored the question and just went on with the script.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, me and one of the other guys, we looked at each other like, what was that all about? And I was just like, that was a bit weird to look at. And the girl after, she was like, is your mate okay? And we're like, yeah, no, he's fine. But like, that was like the first time I had kind of had experience of seeing it. I'd always heard about it, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually a thing. So you get those guys, and then you get the guys who they'll do magic more casually. Like I used to do it at university and school and stuff. And I felt like with me, I like to introduce myself as I want to be your mates for the night, but the magic's just like an extra thing that I'm chucking in there. And I feel like when you're being a normal person first and a magician second, it helps you to basically shuffle those tricks and know exactly what they're going to like. Because they might mention something like, oh, I was playing the lottery and I didn't win. Then I'll pull out a trick that I do with lottery tickets, funnily enough. So it's like I'll overhear things and think, yeah, they're really going to like this. So it's really random.
I
Every
love
group's
that.
different.
Yeah, because you're basically observing how they behave, picking up on what they say,
Exactly.
and then using that as the inspiration to go, I have a trick that fits your story,
Exactly.
and now that trick means something to that person, as opposed to here's a random trick.
Yeah. And that whole personal, like doing a personal piece of magic, because you never know what someone's going through on a particular day. When you do something that's personal for them and they feel that it's personal for them, the impact is greater. And I've had people, like I don't do mentalism. It's not really my thing, but I sprinkle a little bit throughout my act. And I've done stuff where it's like they think of like a relative, and sometimes it's been a relative that's not with them, and they come up after and they were like, "Thank you so much for that. That was such a good experience." And it does really, that personal experience. It does a lot for a person, I feel. So
I agree.
it's a strange one, but it's good.
What has been the biggest lesson that magic has taught you?
The biggest lesson. Oh, that's a difficult one. As in terms of the magic, or in terms of just in general, like life in general.
Both.
Give me a minute on this one. The biggest lesson it's taught me is that everyone's open to something. Oh no, sorry. Everyone is open to something, because magic, especially visual magic, it's universal, regardless of language or like international. You can do something on someone, and they'll always react like, oh my gosh, that's magic. I've done it in other countries and stuff, and I'm just like, I don't expect them to understand what I'm about to do, and they understand it. I'm like, that's crazy. From an English audience to like a French audience or an American audience, they interpret it the same. And I think that's probably the main takeaway from it. It's like it's a universal experience.
I love that, because then people are able to experience the same level of mystery and awe and joy and
Yeah, you
happiness.
find out it's not just a thing for like the Western world where, we'd go out to a theater show and just watch a magic show and then go home. It's like people in other countries love this stuff, especially in third world countries like, India. It's got a very big magic scene that's like on the rise right
Really?
now. Yeah, there's some really cool magicians coming out of India. So that's going to be interesting to see in the next few years. I'm going to Mexico in a couple of weeks' time for a stag party, so I'm going to be doing a little bit out there. I just want to get some footage and see how they react
Yeah.
to it. I remember, I think it was Dynamo's Beyond Belief series a few years ago. He went to Japan, Mexico, and Dubai, and he was doing it there. And you could tell, when you see different cultures reacting to it all the exact same, we just
Yeah.
think, shit, man, that's incredible. So I think that whole universal aspect of it is so important, and that's the main teacher. I'm just like, anyone can learn this and anyone can understand this.
So a big part of magic, and you actually said the word a little bit earlier, is misdirection. What has the ability to create misdirection within a trick, if anything, taught you about how to handle maybe certain situations in life?
It's an interesting one. Think about misdirection. Normally, it's like it will just happen in the most obscure moment that you would never think, like, because a lot of my stuff, I can do it where people are burning my hands, and some of them won't even need misdirection. It's just a case of performing it. But I think, if anything, in real life, it's probably just taught me to like keep an eye on the whole. Like how we went back to earlier on, about observing a group or what they might say. I think that's really important in terms of the misdirection thing, because you could use that to your advantage sometimes. I don't know if that makes sense, because I've never really used it outside of magic, but I think the main takeaway is just keep your eyes on everything going on, because you can use a blind spot to obviously take advantage. I only talk about it from a performance perspective, so it's a very difficult one.
No, I love that though,
Yeah.
because that really resonates. Just being able to keep your eye on everything, and I interpret that as just being able to observe everything that's going on, and then picking from that the bits that you need as important
To do
to
your own mission,
exactly.
basically.
That's really powerful. I love that. How do you keep your tricks fresh?
This is a good one. So I've how do I say this? I went through this little crisis a few years ago. So in university, I was doing like, how do I say? This is going to end up offending a few magicians that are watching this, but I was doing like, so I was doing tricks that were kind of just the base magic amongst your bog standard magician. Like, if you booked 5 guys, the chances are they'd be doing each of these tricks. And for me, I basically I got bored of it. I like changing stuff up just because I'm always watching, shows and, all these TV films, and I look at it, I'm just like, oh man, that'd be cool as a magic trick or whatever. And you, I don't know what it is. I just got a really short attention span when it comes to learning new. No, this. Sorry, we might have to cut this bit. No, all right. Now I can phrase this right. Let me move this a bit here. When I do a trick, I will do it to the point where I get bored, and normally, because I like moving at a very fast pace in life, it happens after a few months. So every few months, I add like a new route, one or two new things into my act, and I'll get rid of. I've got a book. I don't have it on me, but I wrote down every single trick that I do.
Really?
Yeah. So there's over 100 pieces in there, and they're categorized into cards, money, other objects like phones or like lip balms or whatever, technology magic, stage magic. I've basically got a list of everything, and I was basically going to gigs and ticking off what I'd done the most and what I didn't do, and I was basically making new lists each time. So that's what I do to keep it fresh. And on top of that, I kind of look at trends as to what's going on. On TikTok, you get all like certain videos trending or certain sounds trending.
Yeah.
I'll look at that and I'll be like, okay, that's there's a joke in that somewhere if I'm, like laughing with my audience or whatever. And, like especially in Punjabi community, when certain songs are trend, there's a piece I do with music, and that's one thing I feel, like how we talked about having a personal connection with people. That particular piece, when I do it on people, it's like they always go for something that's on TikTok or something that's like trending at the minute, and I'm just like, there's always something where that will benefit me, going back to what we said earlier, if you know what I mean. But keeping it fresh, it's just trying new stuff. Like I like screwing up a lot of magic on purpose. That's one thing I do. And there's a lot of, like a lot of the time the magician will say this might not go right,
Yeah.
but they know it's going to go right.
Yeah.
With me, I'll tell people, I'm like, yeah, this might not go right, and in my head, they'll say, oh yeah, he's talking shit, and I'm just like, yeah, nah, I'm not talking shit. And there's been times it's happened, and most of the time by that point they've seen so much magic from me that they're like, oh, we don't care, just do it again. And I think just having fun with it, really. I think if you take yourself too seriously, that's when you start to get bored, and like you won't have that excitement. Trying new things and keeping it fresh, it comes from like just having fun and experimenting, really.
I love that. And don't worry about cutting stuff out. It's all good, because that's what keeps this conversation real. I've actually come to this point where after the earlier podcast that I did, I used to get so stressed out about trying to make it perfect. And this actually just goes perfectly to your point. I used to get so stressed out about trying to get things perfect, I'd actually like cut out milliseconds from a recording, because I was like,
CapCut, you see it says 0.6.
Literally, yeah. So I used to cut out those milliseconds, and I was like, what am I doing? Because I'm just taking away all the realness. And it just goes to exactly what you just said, which is, if it messes up a little bit, it messes up. You just carry on.
Yeah. Yesterday I posted this piece of magic. I don't know if you saw it. So I chopped a deck of cards in half.
I saw this. Yeah.
So that's a new type of magic that it was a friend of mine who came up with the concept, but that's not my kind of thing. Like it's a mini stage illusion, like, because I talk about the whole girl getting sawn in half and how the magician would pull her out and she's absolutely fine, and it would be the cards that had no cuts in them or anything. I filmed that 20 times.
Really?
Yeah, because like it wasn't just because I wasn't happy with it. It's like the last 5 or 6 is when I was really happy. It was just like they ended up being repeats because I would either screw up my words, and I like those videos to look clean. Like I feel like when you're talking straight to the camera, it should be really perfect. As perfect as you can. Especially
if you're on socials and you're trying to hold someone's attention for that short amount of time.
But like beforehand, it was just like, it's like I wasn't wearing the right clothes, and like I was wearing a black top, and you couldn't even see that the deck kind of blended into my jump. I was like, no, that's not. Then I changed, and it's like when you're talking straight to a camera, I feel like you can kind of be a bit hard on yourself, but you know, when it comes to live performance, you never know what's going to happen. You know,
Yeah.
something could go tits up and something could go very well. And, you know, end of the day, it's up to you. So I don't know. It's a strange one, really. I guess it depends on the context of but that was a new type of magic that I had never tried because I'm a fan of like cards and money and fire and stuff. And to do a mini stage illusion, that wasn't, you know, I was just like, I'm glad I done that because I had a lot of people messaging me after saying, that's a cool piece. Like, and I'm just like, you know, it's just me having fun, really.
Just testing out new
Yeah,
things.
just testing out new things, and you know, it's all about the experimentation, really.
I love that. What is the vision for you for the future? Where do you see you taking your magic?
I used to want to do it on TV. That was always one of my dreams, but I think just, you know, TV is like a dying medium now. And I think it's really unfortunate, you know, like the only magic you ever see on TV nowadays is stuff like the Got Talent shows and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But essentially, I would love to have a TV show if it ever does come. Obviously, I'm not going to say no, but I'd say, you know, something to do with long format YouTube content where, you know, people can follow me on my adventures. You know, I do mini ones on TikTok where I'll bring one of my assistants to a gig, she'll video me, and you know, like people get to see the live reactions at gigs, and I'll chop them up into compilations. Then I'll say which part of this compilation did you like, and I'll post that piece of the magic. And that long format content really connects with people.
It's super interesting because now with the way YouTube works, you could quite easily create, like, do you know when Dynamo did Dubai or Mexico?
Yeah,
Now you're going to Mexico. You could actually just document the entire thing and create
yeah,
your own TV show and create like different
it
episodes
could,
for each
yeah.
day.
But it's really weird. Like Mexico, I've always had this rule on holidays where I'm like, I don't really want to be doing I'll always do like a quick trick for TikTok or something, but I don't want to turn it into a magic thing. Otherwise, what's the point of me going on holiday where I'm still performing? But I don't know. I think it just depends on who I'm with and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to be with my family, well, with my cousins, so you know it'll be interesting to. They'll probably say, "Oh, pull out the cards,"
Pull
and
out
like
the.
let's
They'll encourage you more than you want to do
yeah.
it for sure. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about philosophy because I feel like magic in itself has a lot of philosophies behind the tricks. But is there a particular philosophy that you live by that's come from magic, or maybe even something outside of the world of magic that has really impacted the way that you live on a day-to-day basis?
I think, you know, like as a performer, if you make people happy, that will come back to you in some way, shape, or form as something good. You might not know what it is, but I think that's the main thing I've kind of learned from the thing. Because even within the industry, there's so many guys that will do their own little projects and stuff, and you know, like there's so many connections that are being created with it. But when those correct when the connections are made, it's very much a case of you've kind of made a lifelong friend. So it will always come back to you in some kind of good capacity, whatever you're giving to someone.
I love that.
That's what I can tell you for sure.
Yeah, that's an amazing philosophy to live by, and it's something that I believe in a lot, which is just do in whatever capacity you can good for someone else or something that brings them joy or happiness in some way, and it will come back to you, maybe not even from that person, but it will come back to you from someone in some way when you least expect it, but it's just going to keep kind of circling back like karma. So I absolutely love that. Final 4 questions for you. So the first one is, what do you think is the one skill that is essential for someone to be able to succeed in this world?
Not to do with magic, right? Like
To do it
just in
just
general.
general. And you could put it from magic or you could put it from something else.
Solid communication.
And why is it so important?
Because you know we live in a day and age now where everything's just online, and you know I can't remember who posted the meme, but it's like when we had normal telephones, everyone was calling each other. Now we're super connected, and no one really, you know, the communication's gone down, you know. But I think any kind of good communication that can just open so many doors for you wherever you are.
Yeah, I love that. All my opportunities that I've ever created has come because I've spoken to someone. And it's
We're
just
here right now, aren't we?
Exactly. So This podcast is called The Mindful Creator. What does being mindful mean to you, and how do you practice it?
Being very aware of what's going on around you, could be anything, not just to do with performing, like your family, friends, whatever dramas you might be into. Um, just being well aware of it and knowing what to address it as and when to step back, I think for sure as well.
That's huge. Self-awareness on the knowing of when to step back is, I would argue, even more important than deciding what action to take, because it just shows more control of your emotional response to something.
This might scare you a bit, but I've got like a second voice inside my head. But I've only ever heard it where it's like, I'm in a situation where, like, if I'm doing a magic trick and there's a load of crowd and it's like everything goes silent, and it's like, no, don't do this, don't do that. I've had that a few times. So that self-awareness, 100%.
So what do you call that second voice? How would you describe it? Like, if you had to label it as something, what would you call it?
It's weird. It's like, it was the first time it ever happened. I was in uni. It was like the weirdest experience, but it's like you're looking at yourself. So like, say you're doing the magic and your crowd is right there.
Yeah.
It's like I'm looking like that, and then I can instantly. It's like before I even like look back, it's like I can hear that voice like, no, don't do it this way. Do it this way.
It's like an out of body experience where you're talking to yourself, right?
It's a really weird thing, but I've had that a couple of times, and I've told a couple of people, and they just look at me. They're just like, "That's a bit strange, but it's really good," because most people aren't self-aware. Most people just crack on and kind of they just. It's a weird one, but
I know exactly.
I think it's a benefit. I think.
Not only is a benefit, but it's an essential part of us, because I get the exact same experience, and I know exactly what you're talking about, and I refer to it as just intuition, which is, it's that little voice in your head where you're doing something, and it's like when you're driving. This is the best example. It's like when you're driving along and Google Maps is saying go straight, but you have this like thing where it goes go left.
Yeah.
And you take the left, and you're like, well, Google Maps is saying that's going to be like 5 minutes extra or whatever. But you take it and you end up being like 10 minutes earlier than what the maps are showing you. And that's exactly the same thing.
It's a very weird experience. I don't know how many people actually have that or who that's happened to, but I think it's a very good thing. Like you think to yourself, you're like, I'm glad I heard that voice telling me to do this.
Is there anything that you've done to heighten your awareness of that voice?
You know what? It's very rare that I hear it. It's only in like the most stressful of situations, or like the most. What's that word where like you've got a whole crowd around it and you're not stressed, you're enjoying the buzz, but it's like
just like all eyes on you moment.
I don't know if stopping drinking had anything to do with it, but like that's only been a year, so
okay.
I don't think that's really affected it much, because there's been times where I've had the all eyes on me, and it's after having a cocktail or whatever, and I'm just like, this isn't affecting me whatsoever. But I don't know. I feel like you will only ever hear that side of you where it's needed, and you'll never hear it otherwise.
Interesting.
As weird as that sounds.
I understand what you mean, but I mean, I've been able to make that voice more prominent because of things like meditation. So that's been a really powerful method to silence all the general noise, so then that voice becomes a little bit louder. But it's the same thing when the opposite environment exists, where it's a bit more chaotic, all eyes are on you, and your adrenaline spikes as well. It's like that noise kind of drowns out, which is why that voice then comes through. That's my understanding of it.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
Before I go on to the last two questions, I'm going to chuck in a fifth one. Why did you stop drinking?
You know what? I was never like a drinker, like a typical brown boy kind of drinker. But I used to work at the time, I worked 4 venues. So I worked at Tape, Bodega Negra, Proud Embankment, and a place called The Aura.
Mm-hmm.
And at all of them, it was just this thing where, part of the deal was, they give you food and drink at the end of the performance. And I would just finish and I'd just have, like when you just have a cocktail because you don't want to be rude or whatever. And it's just part of the culture, I guess, when you're working all these nightclubs and stuff. But then when they all stopped, I was just like, well, I'm not going to be at these places often anymore. So it wasn't hard whatsoever. I was just like, I'm just not going to take it anymore.
Fair enough.
It's very strange being like at a party and you can see everyone off their head, and you're just like, damn, like that's wild. So, no judge. I don't judge people that drink like that, but it's just, I'm like, it's interesting what you see when you're not having it yourself, if you know what I mean.
Definitely. Last two questions for you. First one, is there a specific book or movie that has had a huge impact on your life? And what was your biggest takeaway from it?
There's two films that actually had a good impact on my life. Harry
Yeah.
Potter is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say Harry Potter, but I completely agree as to
I
why.
think just as a kid, seeing like obviously when we were growing up and we saw, I remember Harry Potter 1 when it came out on videotape.
Yeah.
We all stayed at my grandma's house, so me and all my cousins, and we watched it in the dark. And like it's like my cousin saying, "Oh, there's Dementors outside," and it's just it's just like it's just typical family Asian family shit. I think firstly that's important because every kid should have that kind of experience of magic, and those Harry Potter films, obviously they were in a day and age where technology isn't as prominent as it is, so seeing something like that kind of makes you think, oh my gosh, that's incredible. And there's a film that came out recently, about 3 years ago. It's called Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard
I've
of
not
it.
watched it.
I'll give you a quick rundown of it. Basically, Justice League got released a few years ago. It wasn't actually the movie that was meant to be released because at the time, Zack Snyder, who was the director, dropped out of filming due to his daughter's passing. So it was a suicide, unfortunately.
Wow.
And basically there was a big campaign saying, no, release the Snyder Cut, because if you go on YouTube, I'll send you some links to it. There's like big differences between the movies, but that when it eventually did come out, it was a 4-hour movie, completely uncut because it was lockdown. I watched it and it was, I don't know what the filmography term for it is, but when they film on IMAX and it's like they'll chop bits off, but it's actually a square. The actual frame is a square. But it's like when they chop it, that's what makes it the rectangle.
Right.
Just from a filming perspective, watching that had a big impact on me just because it kind of... The way I like filming my magic, I like feeling like... I want people to feel like they're actually there watching it. And when I watched that film, I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, there's a lot of slow-mo in it. 25% of the movie is slow motion shots. But from a filmmaker's perspective, like where the colors were, and like it was a very muted film. I think there was just something about how he was trying to convey the movie and what the characters are like, as opposed to this is just a superhero flick, watch it in like your typical Marvel movie. It's very different to what you'd see in Marvel. And I'm just like, when I make my magic videos, I want the video to reflect me as a person, if you know what I mean.
I love that.
Makes any sense.
Yeah, to make sure that it makes your audience, whoever's watching, feel like they're there with you.
Yeah, and that they can relate to the characters that are in that setting. So, that's one thing I love about, it's got to be a bright video. It's got to be people having fun. That's what I want people to look at and be like, that's what we'd feel like if we were next to him. So
I love that. That's cool. Last question for you. If you could go back to one point in time to your younger self and give your younger self one piece of advice, what age would you go back to and what would you say?
I'd go back to when I was 18, so just about to head into uni, and say start those social media videos a little bit earlier than you expected.
I love that. Everyone who's gone onto social media wishes that they started doing it sooner. Well,
I think the beauty of it is that you can kind of start at any time, but when you have a lead start on things like that, I think Dynamo was one of the first magicians putting his videos on YouTube, and David Blaine, and then Darren Brown, and like so many loads of magicians have followed suit. But it's crazy, man. Like obviously the more time you leave it, the more competition you've essentially got. So I'm guessing it's the same with podcasting as well, because everyone's trying to start a podcast nowadays. But the earlier you do it, obviously the more chance you get to refine it and make your own style out of it.
100%. Like the more you repeat something, the more improvements you can make, the more refined it becomes, and the earlier you start, the more compounding momentum you gain. That's it. Saavan, this has been an incredible conversation.
It's
I
been a
really
lot of
appreciate.
fun.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time, man.
Okay, thank you for having me, bro.